Okay. Uh, Great. We have managed to go live on YouTube finally. Fantastic.
Okay.
Yashashvi, I think we'll manage to go live on the others also slowly. We have some smart people trying to work out the technology. For the first time, we are trying to go live simultaneously on 3 platforms. Okay. So, so fantastic. So I will just talk a little bit about Aspire for Her, but yeah, before that, I just wanted to say, warm welcome to Radhika. And we have been really wanting to have you on this platform for as long as this platform is alive. We are 7 months old. We actually launched on Women's Day. And our biggest mission is to ensure that the girls in our country, the young women who are 18 to 25 years old, they actually are motivated to pursue amazing careers. And our whole motivation was that we were seeing gender data emanating from India, which was not very encouraging. And we said, we have to change this equation, and someone has to change this equation. So we thought that someone, and we always wring our hands in despair saying, nobody's doing anything about anything. And we said that someone can also be me. And I think all of us feel like that. And that's why all of us have come together on this platform, Aspire for Her, to ensure that we give enough reasons to young women every day to follow amazing careers. And one of those reasons is, of course, Radhika. Radhika has been an inspiration ever since I saw her at in a conference, and it's absolutely wonderful that you're here among all the young girls here today, and some supporters, our members. We call them members, and some supporters as well, hopefully. And a very warm round of thanks to Shilpa, who actually managed to squeeze in Aspire for Her in your very busy and hectic schedule. I know that. So thank you so much for that. And I know that Shrishti, you will be doing a formal introduction of Radhika. But one thing I have to mention is that what struck me about Radhika's profile was that of course she's done some fabulous stuff. She's very young. She's one of the youngest CEOs in the country. She was an entrepreneur, she turned CEO and all of that. But what really struck me was that the program that she went to at Wharton is one of the most selected programs of the world. I don't know whether all of you know that, but I thought it's important to also bring that out to say that, she has absolutely done some amazing stuff right from her academic career into where she is today. So it is people like you who make Aspire for Her the platform very, very energetic, very, very happening, and we keep having sessions like this. So I'd like to welcome all of you once again. This is a webinar mode, so unfortunately we can't see all of you, but we know that you're all there. And we will interact with you through the chats and all of that. So we have Shrishti Ghosh, Balvika Srinivasan, Jaita Gupta, from Aspire for Her, who will actually be doing the session. Shrishti will be leading it. Nicole is there from MyCaptain, and I'll hand it over to Nicole to you right away. And Yashashvi is trying to ensure that we go live on as many platforms as we can. So thank you very much, Radhika, once again for being here. Very, very happy to welcome you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Madhura, and the entire Aspire for Her team. And Shilpa, thank you for getting me to do this.
Nicole, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Madhura ma'am. Radhika ma'am, I want to say you're absolute inspiration. I've read up so much about you and watched a lot of your TED Talks as well. And we were so glad when, Aspire for Her reached out saying we'd love to, do a webinar session with Radhika ma'am. So we know that our students would also love to, hear your, story, your journey, and, move into the respective fields as well. So a little about MyCaptain. We're an edtech platform where we have 1 month-long workshops in different fields. So we want to help out students in moving into, probably starting their own novel or starting up their own company, giving them a basic idea into the respective fields in the business, tech, writing, and designing sector. So they do this through the 30-day online workshops under the guidance of mentors. And today we're so glad that, we have Radhika ma'am to, help us out understand a little bit more about your journey as well. Thank you so much for agreeing to doing the session. I'm sure it'll be a very informative and lovely one. Over to you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, ma'am, for coming here and being with us. So now coming to the most awaited part of the evening, I would like to introduce to all of you our speaker for today, Ms. Radhika Gupta, MD and CEO of Edelweiss Asset Management Company. She started her career with McKinsey, later switched to Wall Street, joining AQR Capital, pioneers in hedge funds. She then moved to India in 2009 to start her own venture, Forefront Capital Management, which was the first registered hedge fund in India. It was later acquired by Edelweiss Financial Services Limited in 2014. She led Edelweiss' acquisition of JP Morgan's mutual fund business and Ambit Capital's AIF business to become the CEO of Edelweiss Asset Management in 2017. Ms. Radhika is a global citizen having grown up across 4 continents, a keen storyteller, bridge player, and Twitter microblogger. Her YouTube video, The Girl with the Broken Neck, which narrates her life journey, has garnered more than 100,000 videos in a short span of time. She is a member of the AMFI board, chairing the Committee of Mutual Fund Distributors, and a member of Young Presidents Organization. She was recently honored by Business Today magazine, naming her amongst the 30 most powerful women in Indian business. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. So we'll move on to our questions then.
Absolutely, fire away. I hope none of them are very difficult.
So our first question for today is, what inspired you to enter the financial industry, even though your family is from a non-financial background?
So I find this question very interesting. I think, when you grow up in life, you're always told that you're supposed to find your passion, and, this profession that you're going to fall in love with will strike you, etc., etc. But the reality is most of us carve out careers in industries our parents have had actually nothing to do with. And it's also not true. I mean, so my parents, forget financial services, have no background in corporate India. My father is, most of the family has been in the government on my father's side. My mom's family has largely been teachers at that time. And they're very proud of their careers. And in my father's heart, I think he always wanted me to be an IAS officer. But as I said, many of us carve out paths that our parents haven't taken, and that's perfectly fine. I got into finance by luck. I went to Wharton. I liked economics as a student. I also studied engineering, and I did 2 internships at Microsoft. I worked in consulting for a while, and then I got an opportunity to work for a hedge fund. And honestly, that's how I landed up in financial services. Now, I have been in financial services for 15 years, and I absolutely love this profession. I think it's a great industry. It's definitely a great industry for women. It's one of the most, and I have CEO friends in manufacturing, in hospitality, and services, and many, many businesses. I think financial services in that way is a very easy and professional business. I really think you see the best side of India when you're in financial services. So I'm very blessed to be in this business. I also think it's a business where you learn something every day. One of my old bosses said that one of the best parts of this business is that either you're making money every day or you have something new to learn. And clearly none of us are making money every day. So we always have something new to learn. But sort of the meta point, because I think it's an interesting...
So
I just
true.
think it's an interesting question that you asked, because I landed up in financial services because of my education, and I grew to love this profession. I wasn't born into saying, "Main badi okay financial services wali banungi," and I love this profession. And I don't think you need to find your passion when you're 21 or 22, because you are allowed to be confused. I give the analogy of love and arranged marriages. Some people find the person they love in college or whatever, and they fall in love with that person and they get married and they lead very happy lives. I mean, I happen to do that. And some people have arranged marriages. Yeah, they meet someone somehow and they try it out and they get married. Sometimes it doesn't work. The marriages break, the engagements break, and then they grow to fall in love with the person. I grew to fall in love with my profession. I didn't grow up thinking this is the profession ki main bade hoke ye karungi, but I grew to fall in love with the profession. So I think both are very acceptable paths for anyone to take. And, you don't have to have the answers at 21 or 22.
Absolutely agree, ma'am. The next question is, in a lot of your interviews, you've used the word black swan. So as someone who is not from the financial background, could you please elaborate to me on what these black swans are?
Okay, so black swan is like COVID. COVID is a great example. 2020 is a black swan. A black swan is, I mean, most swans in the world are white, right? So where does the terminology come from? But periodically, if you go around lakes, and incidentally, I have actually seen a black swan in life. 2 years ago, I went on a holiday to China. This was not premeditated, and I saw a collection of black swans. So black swan is used to refer to an event that is rare. It is beyond rare, and it is beyond statistically rare. And the reason I think it comes up in a lot of the conversations is, of course, many interviews I've had have been around COVID. But financial services, and I think the world at large, is filled with black swans. And because I believe that because of the kind of interconnected world that we live in, the frequency of these black swans is only going to increase. So COVID is absolutely a black swan. I mean, all of us sitting at home, including me right now, for 7 months is a black swan. 2008 was a black swan. These are financial market black swans. I would say in some event, 9/11 was a black swan. But that's what the term refers to. Something very rare that no one can predict, even though we claim we're in the business of prediction. That's what a black swan is.
Oh, that's great. So now coming to a question, pretty cliche question, but how would you define success, and how important do you think it is for women to take control of their finances?
Okay, so I think that there are two very different questions here. On how you define success, I think everyone has their own definition of success. And I think that definition of success changes over time. It has for me. When I started my career in my 20s, I think money was very important. I come from a middle class family. I mean, money, the company you work for, these things were very important. I remember joining McKinsey, and I used to get a great high that I was flying business class at the age of 21 and staying at these very fancy hotels. I mean, this was nice. Yeah, this felt successful. And then over the years, that definition changes. It became business success. It became success with customers. When I started managing a team, I think employees became a big part of success. Today, if you ask me what success is, it's impact. It's having the opportunity to do things like this, to probably touch people's lives. I remember after Girl with a Broken Neck came out, since it's come out, I mean, it's probably been a year and a half or 2 years since then, I get messages, probably 10, 15 every day from men and women around the world talking about how that video has impacted their life in some way. To me, that is success. So I think success is a definition that changes. I also advocate that every individual in life have their own metrics for success, and what matters to them and what doesn't matter to them. What doesn't matter to them is also equally important, because you can't say money is important, brand is important, work-life balance is important, social impact is important, then you're going to achieve nothing in life. Life doesn't work like that. But you have to have 2 to 3 things that are important to you, and they can change, but I think having that is important. So, and I think having that will also give you the confidence that the world will not define success for you, because we live in a world that likes to define, especially for women. Now, success to everybody has to define. शादी करोगे तो सेटल हो जाओगे, फिर बच्चे हो जाएंगे तो सेटल हो जाओगे. सानिया मिर्जा says I become world number 1, तभी भी मैं सेटल नहीं हुई हूँ. So I think having your own definition of success also prevents the ये करके settle हो जाओगे definition of success that the world imposes on women. As far as money management is concerned, look, I mean, I'll be very straight. I don't think this is a job you can outsource, girls. And I don't think it's a job you can outsource for a few reasons. One, you are smart enough to do it. I mean, if you are smart enough to study and to earn your own money, then managing money is really, really easy. And let me also correct the fact, you do not need to read Warren Buffett quotes and have like a bunch of Bloomberg screens around you to be a good money manager. Our mothers have been managing our household budgets and saving money on the side, which was revealed during demonetization, very well. So you have it in your DNA to manage money. So you have the skills. Secondly, you should do it because life is unfortunately very uncertain. I've seen wonderful women lose everything they want to divorces, to husbands running away with their money, to losing a spouse. My grandmother-in-law lost her spouse at a very young age. So life is unfortunately very, very uncertain. So these are the 2 reasons I think you should manage money. And thirdly, a lot of help is available on managing money. So even if you don't know what to do, there are lots of great financial advisors out there. So you have no reason not to do this yourself.
Absolutely, ma'am. Our next question would be, throughout your journey, you have been subjected to change geographically, physically, and emotionally. So what is that one constant that has kept you going?
I mean, look, the constant is that things change every 3 years. And for me, it's a strangely a 3-year mark. My father moved jobs every 3 years. And as kids, I don't think we liked it. But now it's become so inculcated in life that, and my husband keeps joking about this, that if I don't see some change or challenge every few years, I start getting bored. And he knows I'm starting to get the itch. So he's like, thankfully, we haven't changed countries for 10 years. He's like, wait, are you looking to change jobs? Are you looking to do something? So I fundamentally enjoy change. I keep saying I'm a child of chaos. And I like change. And I think that's the state of the world today. I mean, the biggest edge, and I was telling a boss of mine this yesterday, the biggest edge that young people have is their ability to change quickly. And, I mean, I was thankfully brought up on a background of change. So I'll give you an example. I've been sitting at home for 7 months. Now, this is very strange for someone like me because I used to live at an airport. I mean, the airport security guards know my name or knew my name till 7 months ago. I was traveling 3 days a week. I have 23 branches all over the country. I speak, my whole life was this, and I would wear my sari and go to work and do this. And I have never, I mean, even after my wedding, I didn't take time off. So I've never been at home. Now I have been at home for 7 months, but I have to say I love it. I'm not struggling with this change. It's a new world, but I'm loving the new world. So I think the constant for me has been change. And the constant advice from my father when I grew up was that you have to move forward. You can't be a prisoner of the past. You have to work towards your future. So a friend of mine told this. He said that, you can't be hostage to your past. You have to think about how you want to become a host for your future. And I really like that line. I think you have to think forward.
Yes, ma'am. So the next one would be what is or was the most exciting aspect of the Indian market compared to the other markets that made you want to start your venture here?
So I think the most exciting part of the Indian market is how nascent it is. I moved back 10 years ago, and people in India love to ask these questions like, "Beta, do you regret moving back? What if you were in the US?" I mean, this is like this stuff everybody loves to ask, and I always say, no, I have no regrets from moving back. Now, if you look at the US market, it is a very, very financially literate market, very, very highly penetrated market, very evolved market. The good thing is you're like sitting at the cutting edge of finance in terms of work you're doing. The bad thing is, however, you're solving very third order problems. Like I was trading mortgage-backed securities as my primary profession in the US. I'm selling systematic investment plans for a living. It's not to say that selling systematic investment plans for a living is less exciting. In fact, I argue it's more exciting because in India, the problems are very first order. You live in a country where Pradhan Mantri ji लोगों से जाके कह रहे हैं भैया बैंक अकाउंट खोल लो, भैया बैंक अकाउंट खोल लो. So I think what is exciting about India is you have the opportunity to solve problems, very simple problems at large scale. And that's why you see like this crazy growth. I mean, I went back to the US a few years ago and people are talking about 5% growth and 10% growth and they're feeling very good about it. And in India, we talk about 20 and 50 and 100% growth and we are sort of addicted to growth. I mean, growth is a drug here. So I think that's what's very exciting. So I think your opportunity to make impact in India is just much larger.
I think Shrishti has had some network issues.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, moving on, what are your thoughts on having a plan B and plan C in life?
So I think life has to be a combination and some plan B has to be there. A lot of people ask me about my startup journey, for instance, because at that point in time, I think when we moved to India to start Forefront Capital, I was probably 24. And when you're a middle class kid living abroad, I mean, none of your parents want you to move back. My husband, who you saw in the background, also comes from a middle class Catholic family. So none of our parents are very excited about moving back. And so people ask me why you did it. And I say, well, one, young blood is hungry and foolish. So there's that element. But there was also a very important element of plan B because life is a mix of risks, but also calculated risks. I think that's one of the great things financial services teaches you. So for me, my plan B at that point in time was that while I had a great undergrad degree, I could always go back to business school. And for me, that was a plan B. And I think that much, I mean, you don't need to plan A and B and C and D and E and F and G. but some sense of, if this doesn't work out, how much can I lose? Can I afford to lose that? And what is the other alternative? I think that's very, very important.
That's really a very good advice. I think all of us are going to remember it for like the rest of our lives. So moving on, how do we manage like with limited funds in beginning of a business, and how can we gain the trust of our investors and customers in the future?
So, interesting question. I think all businesses start their way with limited funds. I don't believe that having limited money makes you less creative. In fact, I think in the digital and social media world, the whole importance of budgets has actually come down. In fact, I keep telling my teams, because we are a young asset management company also, we don't have the budgets of some of our competitors like ICICI, etc., etc. But you do your most creative work because you're constrained by budgets. I'll give you an example. If I were to work on ad campaigns and I had big budgets, I could probably employ the best agencies in the country to produce content for me. But if I don't have those kind of budgets, I'll have to push myself on the quality of content. So for instance, we recently did a series that got very popular on Ramayan and linking it to investments. Very homegrown concept, got very, very popular. We run at Edelweiss AMC topicals, just like Amul runs topicals. We run very popular topicals on investments. So I remember the day there was that blackout in Bombay. I mean, you guys would remember that morning. While the blackout was happening, my creative team managed to put out an ad linking the blackout to financial advice. And we got a ton of love for that. And it was because we are constrained on money, but we're not constrained on creativity. And I think that's one of the things. If you talk about startups, one of the sort of most exciting things about a startup is, because you don't have money and because you don't have experience, you have something to prove. And that's when things like content start coming up. So I don't think you should start thinking of money as a constraint. It's not to say that you shouldn't spend money and you should not invest in your business and all that will happen. In fact, in today's world, and I run a retail business, I think managing costs is actually a very important thing. The days of having a big empire and lots of employees and glamorous offices and big budgets are gone as costs go up for everyone and revenues shrink, at least in our industry. Being cost conscious, being lean, having less headcount, employing younger people, being quick on your feet, I think that's the world of the future.
That's so true. I mean, being creative and just being in the moment and taking ahead things is really important. I would now like Malika to take a few questions.
I think
Sure,
Srishti is
thanks.
back as well, in a different avatar though, but she seems to be back.
Thanks, Jayata, and hi, Radhika. Thank you so much again for taking the time to come today. I'm Radhika. So I found it really interesting that you said that Edelweiss doesn't have as much advertising costs as the competitors, because I feel like I follow you on Twitter and I see so much investor advice and financial literacy advice from you and just the team as well. So I think it doesn't matter what the costs are. I just wanted to put that out there. But just another question, I think, coming back to asset management and women. So I think a very normal career path that people think of doing is that they want to go into investment banking and then switch to the buy side and asset management. At least I'm studying finance and economics, so that's what I've heard a lot. But you went from consulting to asset management. So what do you think for getting into asset management directly from undergrad?
Okay, so firstly, and I'll be very frank because I went to a finance school too. I don't know what the obsession with investment banking after graduation is. I just don't understand it. I think it's a media portrayal of investment banking. And I think 95% of the people who want to join investment banking have no idea what investment banking is. And I will also tell you that most of my colleagues, and I never wanted to work at an investment bank, most of my colleagues, with no disregard to the profession, who joined investment banking could not manage to survive after 2 years. I think one girl I know has managed after 15 years to survive in investment banking. So my first tip is that don't join a career path because that's the right thing to do on colleges. Colleges do a great job advertising professions, but the reality, including consulting, by the way, great profession, but not what it's advertised to be in college. I don't think there's a set rule on how to get into asset management. In fact, banking is not the most logical path in the first place. Probably if you want to get into the investment side of asset management, the most logical path is sell side equity research, where you start learning the fundamentals of finance. You do research on companies and gradually you cut your teeth and become a fund manager. Now, research is a far more less, I mean, chances are if I were talking to a group like this, nobody would say I want to work in research. I remember that even at Wharton also. But chances are research has a better chance of landing you into an asset management career. If you do get an opportunity in asset management right out of college, and who says that you can't? I mean, it's competitive, but why not? Then certainly pursue it. And I think people's perspective to this is also changing. So I would just say that there's no set formula that you have to take. I mean, I did it from consulting. I think it's about having the right skill set. Also remember that asset management is not just managing money. There's a business aspect to it. There's a marketing aspect to it. There's a product aspect to it. And these roles are also equally interesting. In fact, in India, at least, and I don't know if this is good or bad, I think 80% of asset management CEOs are not investment professionals. They are sales and marketing professionals. I'm not, but many are. So don't look at finance with one lens because the movies have portrayed it to be that way.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Thank you so much for that. And I just had a tiny follow-up question from something you had mentioned earlier. So I noticed you said you were working on mortgage-backed securities, and that was during 2008 or something around that time. So like around the crisis. So is that, do you have any lessons learned from that, working in that space and then everything crashing at that time, and that you can share with everyone?
So yeah, I did mortgages from 2006, 7, and 8. At some point, finance is very good at creating very complex instruments that many people don't understand. And I think the biggest lesson is that simplicity is very important. I always say this in our own product design also. I've started to dislike the word. I mean, I get called innovative a lot, but I don't like the word innovative because innovative means like people sitting in a lab with test tubes and doing things that are complicated and will blow up in the context of finance. I like being a solver of problems. I like taking consumer needs and finding solutions to them as far as money is concerned. And I think finance needs to greatly simplify. A lot of complicated stuff doesn't really add value. At some point, by the way, funny enough, I was working on mortgage products where the underline was Ninja loans. Ninja at that point stood for people you gave loans to who had no income, no job, and no assets. Subprime happened a few years later. But I think simplicity is very important in the business that we're in.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm passing it on to Shrishti next.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for that. Power cuts these days, you know. In one of your TED Talks, you mentioned there was a period in your life where there were quite a few setbacks. So what advice would you give, especially to our female professionals and young women, on riding out the worst storms in their life?
So I think one thing you have to remember is that setbacks are not only going to be there in college, they are constant, right? I was doing a conversation with an MD of a tech company today, and we were chatting about setbacks. And the fact is, I mean, even today, 15 years working, and obviously there's a long way to go. There's one day in a month where I feel really horrible about my career, or I feel really horrible about my life, or I'm very angry at my team, or I just don't think I can do it. Or there's a job that you wanted I mean, 3-4 years ago, I nearly didn't get the job I have. So I think setbacks are an inevitable part of life. I always say that rejection in some way is redirection into a place that's better for you. Like, I remember many years ago when I applied to college, my dream college was MIT actually, or that's what I thought my dream college was. Now, I didn't get into MIT, but I got into Penn, and I chose to go to Penn. As I reflect, MIT is a very nerdy sort of hard engineering college, and that's not what I was cut out to be. I like my mix of economics and finance. And so I think when they rejected me, maybe I wasn't the right fit for them. And they redirected me to a place like Penn, which was a much better fit for me. And I can think of so many examples like that. So I don't think you should take rejection in life it's easier said than done. I will also say this, but I don't think you should take rejection in life very personally, because honestly, when one door closes, 3 doors also open. I mean, this you can't forget, and it's a way of directing you to a better door. The MIT example is always there in my head, because in my head, MIT was like the school for me. And if I think about it now, there was probably no better school for me than Penn, but that never crossed my head.
Yes, ma'am. So true. What do you think about the Indian mentality of not taking risks and staying in the same jobs throughout their lives?
So look, I think there's a mixed answer to it. I actually don't think so. I think that mentality that you refer to is a mentality of maybe my father's generation. Like, my father joined government and he worked in government all through his life, and he's loved his career, and no harm to that. I actually think, in what I see when I talk to a lot of young people, I think I tweeted this a few days ago. When I talk to people your ages, I actually see quite the opposite. I see people wanting to change jobs in 6 months and 1 year and 1.5 years. And I have counter advice. I think you have to stay in jobs for some time. And there are a couple of reasons why. Like, when I talk to my dad, or when I talk to friends in the armed forces, etc., one of the things that they benefit from is extraordinary training. So, a guy in the armed forces will get all the army training, and he'll get professional training on how to deal with media. Or my dad got horse riding training, and those trainings get. And I was like, listen, corporate India doesn't give you this kind of training. And my dad was like, well, why should corporate India do that? I'm going to serve my country for 35 years. I'm serving my employer for 35 years. You might not serve for 3. And I think, the head of, I think, Goldman India said this to me once, is that to build a successful corporate career, you actually have to go through prolonged periods of hell at one point in time in a single organization, because you do not get anything by switching jobs every 2 years. That's not risk taking. Risk taking is staying with an organization. And I'm not saying you shouldn't switch jobs and switch roles once in a while, but risk taking is also working with a manager that's untested, working with a new brand, starting up a new business within your existing organization, standing by an organization. And I've been with one for the last 2 years. I mean, Edelweiss has gone through its share of stress as a parent company. Standing by an organization through its worst time, that is also risk taking. So risk taking is not flipping job to job to job. And you will ultimately build successful relationships and get an employer to invest with you when you invest something in that employer.
The next one would be how do we manage with limited financing in the beginning of a business, and how do you think we can gain the trust of investors and customers in the future?
I think that question was asked while you were away, Shrishti.
Oh,
So
I'm
we're good.
I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so what are your thoughts on having a plan B or a plan C in life?
That one was also asked.
I think
To
we've
ask.
covered most of the questions. Now
Yeah,
we
I
can
think
move
most
to the
of
Q&A.
The audience question Q&A now.
Yeah, I think just open up to the audience question, because there are lots of them. I've seen a lot of them in the chat and a lot of them here as well. So
I'll hand it over to Jaita and Malvika to take the Q&A from the audience.
Thanks, Shrishti. I can take the first one. So this one's from Madhulika, and it's about financial literacy. So what do you think about financial literacy in the education system in India right now, and what do you think needs to be added for the current education system?
So look, I am not, I have lots of problems with the education system in India, and I'm the daughter of a bunch of educationists, but I have a lot of problems with the education system in India. Can personal finance be a part of the education system in India? Of course it can. But let me also give you a counter perspective. The education system doesn't teach you a lot of things you need to know in life. That doesn't mean you need to rely on the education system to solve your problems. For instance, as important as financial literacy is learning how to conduct yourself and communicate and, make a point across to people. I don't think your education system teaches you anything about that. That doesn't mean you can't equip yourself to do that. So I obviously agree that the state of financial literacy is terrible. I think there's a ton that can be done. But the good news is, you don't again need to rely on the education system, because there are so many resources today. There are blogs, there are shows, there are podcasts, there are financial advisors. And there's so many interesting ways that companies like ours and many other companies are trying to make financial content easy to understand. So I don't think you need to rely on the education system to do that. If it happens, great. There's also, I mean, to be fair to the education system, right? Finance is a very pre-professional kind of life skill. College can't or school can't teach you every life skill. It has to teach you, the basics of literature and math, etc., etc. So I don't grudge the education system too much. I think there's a ton of financial education out there.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And definitely communication is something that can only be taught by experience and not in school. So the next question we have is from Palak, and it's about what hurdles have you faced in your journey? And I know anyone who's watched your video, like the girl with the broken neck, knows about your interviews and all those things. So everything from your academic journey to right now, the last few years and working professionally in financial services. I think any hurdle would be great to hear about.
God, there are many of them. I mean, I think I won't dwell on the old ones. But the recent one in the last 3-4 years is, so when I joined Edelweiss Asset Management, I think there are 45 mutual funds in India. We were ranked 36th or 37th. Now we are ranked 15th, so life has gotten better. But, we are like a very classist country. So if you're big versus small, then you should be treated very differently. Like, you'll get better seats at conferences. You'll get more respect if you're big. And the small guy, nobody likes the small guy. And nobody likes the small guy who dares to challenge the big guy and wants a seat at the table. So people like the small guy who sits at the back of the conference room and away from the table and just claps. But nobody likes challengers who come. So that's always been a challenge. I mean, there was this one really interesting story a few years ago. And I went to a lunch, like one of these industry lunches, and some random financial advisor came to me and he's like, hi, you're really nice. And I just wanted to tell you something. And I was like, what? And he said, I feel really bad for you. So I said, why? He's like, you're the CEO of a small AMC. And like the way he said, small AMC. And he's like, nobody must want to meet you. And I was like, actually life isn't that bad. So I think that's been an interesting challenge. I remember after I had become CEO, I was like super excited to become CEO, and I was like, I'm the queen of the world, first CEO stint. I went to Hyderabad, and we have these financial advisors, and I told my team to organize like an event with a dinner, I think, with the financial advisors of the city, and 3 guys showed up, like 3 people showed up. And then I think we had to hire for our Mumbai team because we didn't have people. And so I told my HR to set up these interviews in MCA, which is close to my office at that point in time. And I was like, okay, I didn't expect crowds of people to come meet me, but I expected the interview roster. I think I had an interview roster of 12 and 1 person showed up. So, and I was like, dude, I'm a CEO, right? And so I also realized that, no matter what you do, you always start life at the bottom of a totem pole again. But it's interesting, right? 3 years later into this industry, I think pre-COVID, I mean, last year, there was a phase in October where, we were doing some marketing work. And in 2 weeks, I managed to get 4,000 financial advisors to come meet me. So, I mean, from struggling to get 3 people to meet me over dinner, you can meet 4,000. So time also fixes a lot of that nonsense. But yeah, that small AMC challenge has been a funny one.
Amazing
Really
story.
inspiring.
Amazing story, but I can't help speaking, and I try to keep shut while this conversation is going on, but this is too good.
Yeah, it always also reminds you to be like be grounded wherever you are, and that's a really good lesson to learn. Jayata, you can take the next one.
So we have question from Radhika. What do you think is the future of private equity in India with respect to privatization of Indian railways?
So I will talk about private equity in general. I will not stick to a specific theme. I think private equity is a very, very promising industry because I think a lot of, if you look at our listed companies, there's a very small segment of large listed companies, and a lot of new age businesses are going to need private capital because the listed markets will not fund them, and eventually they'll become listed companies. So even today, your biggest stock exchange in this country is not listed. Not many hospitals are listed, not many asset management companies are listed, not many insurance companies are listed. It's again the problem of solving large problems at scale. So I think in a country like India, where capital is scarce, but businesses are growing so much, I'm very optimistic about private equity as a business and as a career, actually.
That's really good to know. So moving on, we have a question from Sachin Roy. Is motivation important to work and earn money, or don't you think motivation is not necessary to earn our own bread and butter?
So I think you have to be charged up about what you do. I don't think, in coming back to my investment banking example, I don't think money can be a long-term source of motivation. I mean, for some people it can be. And look, I work in an industry where success is predicated on money. But I don't think you last in a career, even investment banking, for a long time if you're in it for the money. I think there has to be something intrinsic that drives you. So I think motivation is important for coming to work, because, and especially in financial services, it's very important because we are a very cyclical industry. You know, you see years, and I'll give you another example of extreme highs and extreme lows in this industry. So when I joined AQR Capital, it was like the peak of bull markets, 2006-7. And I mean, you will think of this as silly, but each employee, if I went home after 6 o'clock, I got a personalized black limousine that probably cost $300 a ride to drop me home. If any employee wanted any brand of coffee or tea, and I just said, you know, I like this Japanese tea, it would show up in the kitchen cupboard in a week for free. And, you know, when we went to recruit on Penn's campus, we went in a party bus. I mean, this was the excess of Wall Street. And then 2008 happened, by the way, and everything in the pantry vanished. And after 9, the company didn't even reimburse the train ticket. And so it sounds like a very trivial example, but at least in the industry I come from, and layoffs became the reality. And, you know, I mean, I've seen times in 2008, there was a period in AQR which was called layoff day. And we kind of knew it was happening. It was the first time I had experienced this. And my friend got a phone call. I mean, this guy had come to my wedding and he's sitting like a few desks away, and he got a call and he picks up the phone and they tell him he's been laid off, and his computer screen goes blank and his phone line disconnects. And within a few minutes, there's like this big bulky guard at his desk with a plastic bag saying, out with your stuff. And so ours is a very, very extreme industry. And you will, even if you're not laid off and you manage to keep your job, you have to have something that keeps you going through the tough times, because you will not survive in finance if you can't get through the tough times.
I think it's what they say, do what you love and love what you do. So that's what keeps you going. Malvika, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jayata. And that story was eye-opening. I think it's always important to, like, I mean, you can lose your job at any time. So it's important to keep something driving you and not just join finance because it's, I don't know, trendy. So Jyoti asked a question about what is your strategy to try new things in which you don't have experience. So I guess that would be referring to maybe starting forefront and then moving over to Edelweiss and stuff. So what I guess what was your strategy in starting something new?
So I am always trying to do something new. So I've got this new mantra which I've been following for a few years. Now, trying something new doesn't mean changing jobs, because that can be very, very exhausting, or changing countries, because that's also not practical in life. But I try to pick up something every year that is like potentially game changing for me. It could be at work or it could be personal. So like 3.5 years ago, I realized I was a super shy public speaker. Now when I say this, nobody believes it, but like I was terrified of holding a mic. I remember there was a merger I was managing when we had acquired JP Morgan, and the Edelweiss guys were there and the JP Morgan guys are there. Nobody likes each other in mergers. So we had this merger offsite, and in this hotel room in Lonavala, like all the JP Morgan guys are sitting in one corner and all the Edelweiss guys are sitting in one corner, and one is a Desi firm and one is a foreign firm. So obviously they have their own set of issues. And my boss was quite senior to me at that point, was supposed to come in and make this speech, like to motivate all these troops. And he was in the hotel and he reached Lonavala, and I'm standing there waiting for him, and he calls me and he says, you know, I have a great idea. I'm not going to come for this event. And I was like, why, are you sick? And he said, no, I think it'll be great for you to go out and make the speech. It'll be great for your leadership. And I was like, really? And I had not done large scale public speaking till then. because in Forefront Capital, I managed a team of 8 odd people. So when are you going to do large scale public speaking? So I literally remember holding that mic and like looking at these people, and I was like, they're all judging me. They all want to kill me. They all hate me. I'm going to die on this stage. And so that was a moment. And then I went to a class on storytelling, and I met this guy who coached me on storytelling, and it completely changed my life. And then I did the video girl in a broken neck. And I've probably now done about 300-400 pieces of large scale public speaking with more than 300-400 people present. And now my team says that even if in my, like, I'm in a half dead sick state, if you put me on stage, you will see the best in me. If you put me on a physical stage, I almost say it's intoxicating. So I think that journey from being terrified with that mic and like thinking the world is my enemy to like finding absolute joy on stage. So I try to pick up one of these things every year or 2 years and try to see it through. So that's been my strategy for development and change.
Like every story you're saying is so inspiring.
This is amazing. Again, sorry, I had to talk. This is you mean that you were actually shy in front of a crowd, and then this class actually changed your attitude to speaking to people?
Yeah, it totally did. And it just, I mean, I learned so much. And I do teach. I mean, at some point, I'd love to do it for a larger crowd. I do teach storytelling and public speaking. People keep saying that the whole thing about the girl with the broken neck in that video did a lot for like brand Radhika, which I don't understand, and for other people. Honestly, it did the most for me, because from being terribly insecure about my looks and my issues, I'm like super confident about myself. So it just freed me completely. And I think once you have that confidence, it reflects on stage. In fact, I mean, this is an unrelated story. I think a year ago, Money Control asked a bunch of CEOs, where do you invest 1 lakh rupees? I mean, some banal financial services question like that. So they put up pictures of all these CEOs, and of course, everyone else is a guy. And they put up my picture too on Twitter. And I have a slight squint in the eye. I don't know if anyone's noticed. So some guy goes and comments that, why does this CEO have a squint in her eye? Now, it's not like the guys in that picture look perfect, okay? They also have their physical issues, right? But everyone has to notice, because I'm the girl, everyone has to notice the squint in my eye. Right. Now, in the pre-public speaking days, I would have been like crying over the squint. Oh my God, they found my squint. How could I put out a picture with a squint, etc. I actually wrote on social, and maybe Malvika, you would have seen this. I was like, okay, I have a squint in my eye. I have this weird looking neck, but in my head, I'm really beautiful. And I'm sure every other girl is too. And like hundreds of people rallied in support around me. Now that's the self-confidence is just a function of the public speaking.
Amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah, it kind of leads really well into my next question, which is about being.
Saundri is here in the thing. The chat boxes are exploding, so I will just take 1 more minute, Malvika. Sorry.
Yeah. No worries.
So Saundri is actually, one of our mentors, Radhika, and Saundri is from Hong Kong, and she actually is a business storytelling coach. And she's talked about how she loved how you harness the power of storytelling at work and how you're using it today. So really, Saundri, I think Radhika is a prime example of how you can actually transform, even one's own attitude towards actually projecting oneself. It is absolutely fantastic. Of course, Jyoti, Riya, all of them are saying fabulous things. But yeah, sorry, over to you. Back again, Malvika.
No worries. Thank you so much. So I guess this question, what I was saying was leading really well into this was about being a woman in a male-dominated industry. That I guess that's kind of one of the main reasons we are working towards getting more women into different industries. But of course, this one's about financial services. So do you have any advice to women trying to break into this industry? And I know that everyone faces some sort of hurdles, whether it's how you dress or like how you present yourself in an interview, or just how you're perceived, even if you're equal to someone, to another male competitor interviewing for a job. So what kind of advice do you have, and what should one remember in times where, you might not be that successful?
Okay, so firstly, there are not enough of us. I think financial services and, I'm no one to speak about anyone else, but even asset management, we do a terrible job of hiring, retaining, promoting women. And I think the first thing you have to realize is if you join this industry, you will be an outlier. I think some of the pop culture, like the Wolf of Wall Street and like this Scam 82 and, risk hai to ishq hai, this also propagates the Bloomberg, Warren Buffett, very risky, etc. myth, when actually asset management professionals are very nerdy people who are very conscious of the fact that they are managing other people's money. There's tremendous responsibility on them. I don't think it is anything like Bazaar or Wolf of Wall Street or corporate or whatever it is made out to be. So firstly, don't get scared and realize you will be a minority. Now, knowing that you are a minority, use the fact that you are a woman to your advantage and in the right way. I think when I joined this industry, I very quickly realized I am also not only a woman. I was 33 when I became CEO of the asset management business. So I was probably 12 years younger than the next person. And I don't come from a mutual fund background. I come from a hedge fund background. So all these media interviews used to like start, and one guy, and if you see one of my Mint interviews, a guy actually asks me, a journal who's become a very good friend of mine, you have no experience, how will you do this? I was like, and if you just see the tone of the interview, it'll make you angry. Very quickly, I realized that, however, because I am different, because I'm a woman, I'm young, I come from a different background, I will put my own stamp on things. So the way we run our events will be different. The way we do our conferences will be different. The way we do our communication will be different. The way we do our thinking will be different. And the minute I embrace that and realize it's a strength, the world will see, the world is a mirror. It will look at you the way you see yourself. So if you see being a woman as an edge, everyone will see you being a woman as an edge. Because I'm a girl in this industry and I'm the only one, I've got to interview Mary Com. I've got to chill with Arundhati Bhattacharya. I've got to know Zia Modi well. I mean, I've been part of hundreds of awards and panels, and I get to do things like this. Most of my guy colleagues say I get far more attention than I deserve because of my gender. Is my gender a liability or an asset now? I think it's what I think it is. In fact, it's really hilarious. We were talking, and do remember that your gender brings, this is an industry that is serving a consumer base that is 50% men and 50% women. And being a woman also brings a tremendous amount of stuff to the table. Again, I think the marketing campaigns of Edelweiss AMC often get a lot of love. We just put out one right now. It's 25 years of DDLJ, guys, for anyone who's a Dilwale fan. And so we just put out one. Of course, there's that line, bade bade deshon mein aisi choti choti baatein hoti hain. So we just put one saying ki lambe lambe investment ke safar mein chote chote corrections hote rehte hain. And like, I've got hundreds of messages on how creative it is. That's just a bunch of girls like liking Shah Rukh Khan and turning that into their profession. So bring your own perspective to your work. Yeah, being a woman can be an advantage. And the last piece I'd say is, don't be afraid to be ambitious in this profession. I don't think women are ambitious enough. I say this again and again, and there is no reason not to be ambitious. When you aspire to be a cricketer, you don't say, "Main Ranji Trophy khelunga ya main gully cricket khelunga." Your aspiration is कि मुझे national team में खेलना है, right? Now, if you're aspiring to have a career in financial services, and I always ask people, by the way, who want to work for us, that what do you want to be? And I get heartbroken when people are like, I want to grow in life. I want an entry level guy to say, I aspire to be the CEO of this firm. I remember 4 years ago when I was like fighting with my management about how I want this role. One of my bosses told me, and he's like, you don't look retail, because, I come from a very overseas background. कि तुम आसाम में जाके साड़ी पहन के कैसे करोगी? How? Nobody sees you doing that, And he said, write down your aspiration on a chit of paper. And we had this conversation in the cafeteria. And I said, look, my aspiration is to run a bank one day. Now, it's 32 or 33. But at that point, I think when I said that, it awakened something in him. So I think if you don't set your aspirations high up here, the world will smash you there.
I loved so many parts of this entire story, and especially like using being a woman as an asset. I think that makes so much sense. And the last point I think is very like, it's when you ask for something, you get it. If you don't ask for anything, you're not going to get it. So I think that's something I always remember. But Jayata, you can ask the next question.
Sure. Truly, your stories are like really inspiring. I think confidence is really important for any one of us out here. So moving on, we have Sungda Singh Sinha. Would you enjoy working for an established brand of financial services or heading a startup business with young people?
Good question. Have done both. I've never worked for a super established brand. I mean, Edelweiss is a very well-known brand, but I'm building a young business within that. I always live for today. So I told something to my team in a recent offsite. I said, if you think about a startup, then a startup is basically a group of people who have the passion to prove something because they've not accomplished anything. And an experienced person is someone who has the wisdom of having done something before. And I said, can we as a business, because I think of us as a startup within the Edelweiss fold, can we combine the passion of a startup and the wisdom of an experience? So can we be an experienced startup? So that's what I'm doing today. And I really live for the present. So yeah, no, I love it. And I think, look, it's important to have a diversity of experiences. So my startup stint gave me a lot. My CEO stint is giving me a different set of experiences. I do think it's important to collect different kinds of experiences.
Definitely. I think experience is what takes us forward. So moving on, we have a question from Ubaid. If one person is innovative, should we call him an entrepreneur?
No, I don't think innovation and so firstly, innovation, as I said, is a very funny little word because I don't like the word innovation. It just sounds complicated and cute and jugaad innovation. I don't like these words. I think innovation can happen if you're a school teacher. I think you can be innovative if you're an ops professional. I think you can be innovative if you are an entrepreneur. And I think you can be innovative if you're sitting in a corporate office. So I don't think innovative is restricted to startups. I'm just going to turn the light on.
Definitely. Malvika, over to you.
Okay, great. So this is, I guess, a bit more nuanced towards finance. So Gargi is asking, the regulations are becoming stricter every day in the finance industry, and especially I know personally, at least for the mutual fund industry, there's so many regulations. Don't you think it's becoming too much for small businesses and affecting the industry growth in general?
Okay, so I have a slightly contra perspective on regulation. I do realize that we are in an industry that manages public money and the money of the average Indian consumer. And I think there is a need to be regulated. I think India is one of the better regulated financial systems in the world. We are also a less financially literate market. So if we have veered towards being a little more regulated, I don't think that's a bad thing. In fact, for the mutual fund industry, I think regulation has been our best friend. This is an industry where you will invest at some of the lowest costs possible, genuinely lowest cost possible. You know everything about everything from what your CEO and fund manager ought to earn, to how many fees you pay, to what the size of the fund is. I mean, everything is so transparent and regulated that we are a very high governance industry. So while nobody is always happy with the regulator, I actually think regulation and transparency has been our biggest asset. And as I said, I'm very cognizant of the responsibility that we manage public money.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. I guess one more question about again finances. Would you share some thoughts on chartered wealth management courses and the benefit of them? That's an anonymous attendee.
So I don't know the CWM program, so I can't share. I think I know the CFA program, so I know that if you're pursuing a career in investment management, I think the CFA is a good curriculum. I also think very highly of CA, by the way, as a opportunity to enter financial services. I think it's an absolutely underrated degree versus the MBA. But finally, I will tell you, look, when I came to India, someone told me that you can't make it in this country without a master's. I don't have a master's degree. My husband doesn't have a master's degree either. He's a fund manager. Again, I don't think there's a formula. You can do an MBA, you can have a solid undergrad degree, and that could be an engineering degree. You can have a CFA degree, you can have a CA degree. Education will only carry you that far. Beyond that, it's what you bring to the table and how much you keep learning. Also realize India is a very evolving capital market. New instruments are coming in, new regulations are coming in. So it's not just about the last 4 years of education you've got. It's also about how you keep evolving with that experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess I have one personal question from my side as well. So I'm also studying in the US like you did. And I get this a lot that, coming back to India and trying to work in finance might be hard because you don't know the tax rules. You've not learned about the Companies Act and this and that. So, like, what advice do you have for students studying in international countries and coming back to India? And what was like your experience moving back and having to learn all the nuances of the Indian industry?
Okay, so I had never lived in India, forget worked in India when I came back, and not even run a business. I think that you can learn everything. In fact, funny enough, when I moved back to start Forefront Capital, we were three professionals and all three of us were investment professionals. So we didn't know anything about tax or setting up a company. The two guys somehow decided that they are going to do all the money management work. So they said, you do everything else. So I actually filed our PAN card. I set up the company with ROC and I fought with ROC for the name change, etc. And because we were the first registered AIF in the country, I also have done all the SEBI applications and sat with the lawyers. So I think you can learn it if you want to be hands-on. The thing not to do is, and this was one piece of advice I actually got when I moved back from the US, possibly the best piece of advice I got when I moved back. It was from a broker who was my father-in-law's friend. And he said, people who come back from the US, when they come to India, they have a tremendous sense of arrogance about them. They think they know the world. They think they've come from a developed market and they think India is beneath them. And literally they have that NRI touch. He's like, don't do that. If you want to be respected in India, firstly realize that you haven't achieved anything in India compared to people who have. You've been a success in that market. You've not been a success in this market. So get rid of all your arrogance and get hands-on and learn this market and you'll be absolutely fine. I think it was a really solid piece of advice that he gave me. So my short answer to it is the Companies Act and tax laws can be learned as long as you don't forget that you have to learn.
Yeah, that's great. Again, just another reminder to be down to earth. So yeah, Jayata, are there any more questions?
Yeah, so one concluding question we have from Aisha. How do you believe can the situation of small scale businesses in India be improved during the COVID times?
So I think small scale businesses in India have had it really tough actually since GST. But it's a government directive to get small scale businesses to professionalize. If you want to be a business in India and no longer pay tax and no longer digitize, I think it is going to be very, very, very difficult. And that's clearly the message of the last 2 years. COVID has also shown that. So I tell all small and medium sized entrepreneurs that wake up and smell the coffee. Otherwise, you'll be eaten up by someone bigger. And India will succeed if small scale industries succeed.
That's so true. Thank you so much for that. Shrishti, I'd now like you to do the thank you note.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the amazing answers. It was so inspiring. Thank you so much for your valuable time. It was an honor to have you with us, and we are very grateful for this insightful session. I'm sure that all of us have learned something new today. I would like to hand it over to Madhura, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Radhika, really a pleasure. I think, listening to all of this, and I'm sure that this will be like Saundari said, that I will keep on listening to the recording of this and, over and over again so that, we kind of relive all the conversations and the stories that we've heard today. I think all of them were really gems in their own way. And I would like to actually ask you a question. So I will probably, end with that. I know you're kind of coming towards your deadline. So, but it will not take you long, I guess. So for an organization like Aspire for Her, we are trying to build a movement here. We're trying to build a movement with young women, 18 to 25 years old, and we're trying to show them career previews. We're trying to get them the mentors and role models and all of that. And we through our nudges, through our triggers, and through all of this session that we're doing, we're trying to sort of tell them that having a career is a great idea. And there are so many different things that you can look at. What would your advice be to the girls and to us as Aspire for Her in general?
Keep going. The biggest myth in this country and for women is that women don't get along with women. It's a terrible myth men propagate. But over the years, and I wasn't very cognizant, I'll be very honest, of gender biases, etc. when I was younger, because at that point, life is 50-50. So you don't even realize the need for these things. I have as I've become older. And as I've interacted with many senior women CEOs, and I have friends in the film industry who had production companies and friends in the manufacturing business, that network is such a delight. I mean, it is such a delight. It's refreshing, and there's so much we bring to each other. So I would just say keep the community going and find strength in each other. We just desperately need to do that.
Which is what we keep trying to do. And I think women supporting women is one theme that we constantly harp on. I think, and it's so good that you're actually talking about that, because this is the peer community we are trying to build, and we hope that at any point in time in their lives, when they're at crossroads, this peer community will support them, elevate them, and enable them to take the right decisions. So wonderful, and we would love to have you back here again, Radhika, definitely for that storytelling workshop that you talked about, and just to get you back in the community. But we'd love to have more of you, and this is absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much once again for making time for us.
Thank you. Do great work, girls. And when you do great work, go support another girl.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Definitely, ma'am. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, we actually finished a little before time.
Yes, ma'am.
So, guys, I think the next session
Stop
we
the
have.
recording.
Yeah, you can stop the recording. Yeah. Thank you. I think it's amazing. The stories she said were absolutely amazing. And we hope all of you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. The next session that we have is actually with Manisha Girotra and Malvika. That's some time away, but you're taking that session, right? So that is about, again, a very popular and a very highly sort of sought after space in finance. So yeah, I'm sure that will be as interesting as this. So thank you very much, Shrishti, Jaita, Malvika, Yashashvi, Nicole. Thank you very much, and have a great evening, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.